The original John Wick was a 2014 action movie starring Keanu Reeves that was whipped up on the quick for a paltry 20 mil as a side project for pretty much everyone involved, and shocked the movie-going public by turning out to be actually quite good. Not a masterpiece by any sense of the term, because the direction was meh and the story was really kinda garbage when you think about it, but it had a certain attention to detail that allowed it to rise above being just a solid genre film and an exercise in finding out how many different ways Keanu Reeves could point a gun at you on a movie poster. Which I suppose is to be expected when both the writer and director are stuntmen first and filmmakers second. Sure, the film's narrative might sink like a stone and waste away in the muddy undertows of the lake bed of mediocrity, but the sheer amount of fun this movie had in knowingly subverting the tropes of action movies pretty much made up for it. Most of the time we take for granted the action of reloading because the act of killing cannot occur during that time, so why even bother showing it? Well, some people give a shit about realism in their movies, so having the wherewithal to not only show the act of reloading, but merge it with the ongoing combat is not only commendable, but is basically fan service for people who are overdrawn at the testosterone bank. Now there's a sequel from the same creative team, and to those of you who saw and enjoyed the first, that statement alone is a recommendation in and of itself. For the rest of you, it stands to reason that practice makes perfect. You see, John Wick Chapter 2 is a sequel. I mean, a real fucking sequel. You thought we were only going to talk about bad sequels on this show? Fuck no. This movie makes me want to... Okay, real talk. John Wick Chapter 2 expands upon the works of his predecessor through a logical escalation of the individual elements of the film's premise to create an all-around bigger and better version of the original, which is great for a couple reasons. First off, it's everything the sequel should be. Secondly, it also helps you, the viewer. In the event that you haven't seen the first John Wick, this review now doubles as a review of the original, provided that you append the phrase, but slightly worse, to the end of every sentence from this point forward. The question at this point being, what exactly was there to be improved upon from the first John Wick? A lot, to be honest. The original wasn't anywhere near the genre-redefining staple that fanatical news outlets would have you believe beneath their 15 cents a click commission. Like I said earlier, the screenplay was a plate of hot garbage as far as action storytelling goes. Retired hitman kills Russian mobsters for killing his dog would be an amazing newspaper headline, but as far as a movie premise goes, its novelty was quickly weighed down by a convenience-laden narrative that never quite lived up to its potential. John Wick Chapter 2's premise is significantly more robust, and as such is much better suited to support a 2-hour-long movie. In this case, an old colleague to whom John is indebted appears in response to the events of the first movie to ask a favor. Things go awry in his mission in Rome, and John returns to New York to discover that a contract has been placed on his head, and every assassin in the city is hunting him down. As with the first John Wick, the story is more or less trappings used to generate action scenes, but this time around it actually makes sense for John to participate in the world building and to be in all these highly stylized locales. A script requiring a character to constantly be changing locations covers the bases a lot more efficiently than one in which the protagonist is forced to move at the pace of an antagonist. The sheer variety of settings on display is another area in which John Wick has marketably improved. If you recall, outside of a barely 5-minute stint in a semi-crowded nightclub, the original John Wick's production wasn't exactly a visual marvel, featuring copious amounts of rainy nighttime exteriors and poorly lit grungy warehouses. Meanwhile, in Chapter 2, not only is there a requisite nightclub scene with standard electro house backing music, but also an expansive gothic catacomb, a sterile polished subway station, and a climactic showdown in a contemporary art museum that truly has to be seen to be believed. That may not sound like a lot, but the action scenes are broken up with vignettes containing, what else? Even more action scenes. And that's John Wick Chapter 2's real strength. It's basically paced like a roller coaster. Once it sets off, it almost never stops. And even when it does, it still manages to keep up a consistent tone through confrontational dialogue between John Wick and the movie's supporting cast, without ever falling into the realms of some slapdash interpersonal conflict. Everyone's motives are cut completely clear and they stick to them like glue, assuring that even the bit parts can still be just as memorable as the lead, up until they're beaten, shot, stabbed, or sometimes even all three. All this and more allows John Wick Chapter 2 to transcend the original and take its place among the best action films of the 21st century, free of the tedious chains of the joyless, thinly written, visually stagnant, spastically edited trash, content with willing the audience into a quick-cut, explosion-induced stupor instead of actually engaging them. Can it get any better than this? I guess we'll have to wait for Chapter 3 to find out.